Happy New Year this weekers. Happy New Brexit. Perhaps not, but there's nothing like New Year's resolutions to get us off to a positive start. And from now on, my body is a temple, ancient and crumbling. Theresa May was back on the Brexit treadmill faster than Jean-Claude Juncker could give up dry January. The PM's been stressing the progress made since delaying a vote last month. But at PMQs, Jeremy Corbyn thought she was more like a hamster stuck on the wheel.
The Prime Minister has spent the last week begging for warm words from EU leaders and achieved nothing. Not one single dot or comma has changed. If her deal is defeated next week, as I hope and expect it will the Prime Minister do the right thing and let the people have a real say and call a general election?
No, we've put a good deal on the table that protects jobs and security. But I noticed in all of that we still don't know what Brexit plan the Right Honourable Gentleman has. He's been for and against the customs union. He's been for and against an independent trade policy. He was a Eurosceptic, now he's pro the EU. The one thing we know about the Right Honourable Gentleman is his Brexit policies are the many, not the few.
The Maybot's posing Brexit as a choice between her deal or no deal, but opposition seems to be strengthening rather than diminishing to both in the House of Commons. A cross-party alliance of MPs, including 20 Conservatives, many of them former ministers, inflicted a defeat on the finance bill. The intention is to limit the government's scope for manoeuvre if we crash out of the EU without a deal. And it was led by Labour's Yvette Cooper.
I'm worried that we could come to the crunch and Parliament wouldn't have the powers to stop it happening. And I think we have a responsibility not to just stand by.
The threat of crashing out without a deal had ministers in a spin at the Cabinet on Tuesday. Michael Gove thought those opposed to May's agreement were like swingers in their mid-50s waiting for Scarlett Johansson to turn up. So he got the invitation to Portillo's New Year's Eve party too. There are also warnings against no deal from Visage, Amber Rudd and Business Secretary Greg Clark.
It is essential that we should be able to continue to trade. It's why I've always been clear, representing very strongly the views of small business and large business, that no deal should not be contemplated.
Oh, you didn't see that. Anyway, hardline Brexiteers don't think leaving without a deal would be a crunch.
I'm not concerned about no deal because we trade with very large economies around the world on world trade terms. And we know that at last the government is getting going, preparing for that. And when you hear all these hysterical stories, you have to ask why. Why are we going to be so stupid as to stop drugs and food and car parts coming to us?
All this Brexit's very stressful. Maybe MPs should have a New Year's resolution to do yoga. Try some of this pranayama or something. The Prime Minister suffered a second significant defeat this week when the Speaker broke with convention and allowed MPs to take back control by voting for former Attorney General Dominic Grieve's amendment, which means if she loses the meaningful vote, the Prime Minister must produce her Plan B within 3 sitting days.
We're getting very close to the 29th of March, and what I wanted to try to ensure was that there was a clear signal to the government that there has got, if the government's deal is defeated next week, we have got to have a serious dialogue between government and Parliament about alternatives, because otherwise we are going to end up, the crisis is deepening by the day.
Kevin, time to find your downward-facing dog.
I'm not trying that. As power appeared to drain away from the government to MPs, some Conservative Eurosceptics couldn't contain their anger.
I have never known any occasion when any Speaker has overruled a motion of the House of Commons.
we will have an unshakable conviction that the referee is no longer neutral.
And now the cat pose, Kevin.
Meow. I would suggest to some of my honourable friends, the ones that are getting somewhat overexcited, that perhaps they should don a yellow jacket and go outside to take part in this discussion.
And that was the chair pose.
I require no lessons or lectures from others about how to discharge my obligations to Parliament and in support of the rights of backbench parliamentarians.
Another New Year's resolution is more squash and less beer. On Monday, the government launched its plan to keep NHS England in good shape. It set out plans to keep us healthier and spend the £20.5 billion cash injection announced last year.
It will lead to 150,000 heart attacks, strokes and dementia cases prevented, 55,000 more people surviving cancer each year. In all, 500,000 lives saved over the next 10 years, funded by taxpayers, designed by doctors, delivered by this government.
Will he confirm that once inflation is taken into account, once the pay rise is factored in, once the standard NHS England assumption on activity is applied, that there's actually a £1 billion shortfall in the NHS England revenue budget for this coming financial year?
Well, that was exhausting. Time to embrace 2019 as a vegan with a nice sausage roll. Anyone got a bottle of Blue Nun to wash it down?